Oh my goodness. First of all, with the moon being the overall here, I think that the both of you are kind of confused about the way that you feel about each other. You know, and I don't think that you're intentionally trying to avoid the reality of the situation. Actually, I don't feel that on either side. I just think that, you know, things are not very clear. Things are not very clear in terms of feelings that you're both having, and not being very realistic about where the relationship is going. And I do think that that is going to come into question here moving forward. Now, the way that you come into this with the Nine of Swords, I don't feel like you're regretting anything. I think that you may be in a place right now where you are tearing yourself apart on whether or not this is something that you should be continuing to do, especially if the other person is like showing that they're not willing to invest any more into the relationship, or if they've actually like communicated to you that they're wanting to kind of like move on. Now, I think that though they clearly do not take that course of action, but I think that you're going to be a little bit more so disappointed, I think, with what you actually see out of them. So, you know, and again, with the Nine of Swords here and the moon, I think that a lot of you are questioning on whether or not this is the right situation to be involved with, you know. Now, moving into the Eight of Wands here, we're talking about, you know, communication that is going back and forth between the two of you, but I think that it's you really trying to get a sense of, you know, how things are going to continue to move forward, right? Let's get things kind of like back on track, so to speak. I see that more so than with the Chariot coming out here. But clearly we're communicating on what course of action somebody is going to take. And with the Two of Wands here, they're not really deciding to, you know, move forward with the relationship or to move on. Unfortunately, where you move into after that with the Three of Swords, I think that you're going to continue to feel, you know, the heartbreak over the fact that they're not willing to kind of give you any more than what they already have, but yet they're not really moving on. So this is one of those situations where, you know, what you see is what you get, but I don't think that they're making an effort here to kind of like give you anything. You know, I think that they kind of look at it like, you know, look, this is what I have given. I don't know what else you expect me to give you. And I think that that's where there's going to be like this heartbreak feeling. Now, moving out of that, with the Four of Wands, we're talking about getting to a place of stability with this relationship. Now, it could be, though, with the Six of Pentacles that they're trying to give you a little bit more to kind of like make up for any kind of heartbreak that you may be experiencing. But I think that this is directly related to you're not getting what you expected out of this person. It's not an easy situation. You know, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's, you know, considering whether or not to move on from you. And they may be really looking at, is this the right course of action to continue to give to this? And what you actually see is not going to be easy, right? It's not going to feel good. You know, it hurts. But like I said, with the Four of Wands, we're talking about getting to a place of stability with the relationship. This could literally be about somebody that you are living with. Now, with the Moon, if we're talking about secrets, especially with the High Priestess, you know, it may be that there is an inability to kind of like trust your own intuition when it comes to moving forward on this relationship. Now, you know, I want to clarify this because this could suggest that we're talking about somebody that may be moving out or moving on. And I say that because they come in with the Eight of Cups. They've already considered wanting to leave this and not wanting to give any more. But I still think that you're coming from the same place here of going, you know, this person is driving me nuts. They're driving me mad. I don't know what to think. I don't know if this is the right thing to continue to do. But all you're doing here is torturing yourself, right? But there's no clarity in the situation. The High Priestess, though, can show that, you know, maybe there is some information that's coming out where you're going to have to, like, read between the lines, so to speak. So with the Chariot, yeah, again, going back to the Eight of Wands, we could be discussing on, where this relationship is going. We could be talking about, this being like a long distance relationship and there needing to be like travel involved here with the Chariot. But, we could be talking about somebody that feels like they're being pulled in two different directions. Like, first they want to move forward with everything and then they completely go a different direction. So it may be that they need to get some things in their own life under control, the way that they're thinking and feeling, But the Four of Wands would suggest that we're trying to get some kind of stability. I don't think that this is a situation where we're celebrating too early, but maybe in order for there to be stability, what you need to kind of like bring to light here with the High Priestess is that maybe they need to like move somewhere else. So that there isn't this constant like back and forth of, am I working on this relationship or am I moving on? Because I feel that on both sides with this. And then the Page of Pentacles. So yeah, and I do think that the Four of Wands is probably a good thing here. But in terms of any kind of confusion or disillusionment, all of that, needs to kind of come out in the open. I think that the High Priestess in this case is going to be about the both of you needing to speak what has been kept secret. And letting that kind of information come out so that, there is at least some idea of who's going where here with the Chariot. Now, what I find interesting here is that this is, a pretty good connection between the two of you. Again, whether you're the male or female and whether you're dealing with a male or female doesn't matter here. But you showing the Queen of Wands, right? This is where we're talking about you feeling confident. There's the passion, the excitement, the ability to kind of make something happen here, having the passion and drive to do something, and they're showing the same thing with the King of Wands, right? And I don't think that it's an issue of commitment here. I think that the both of you really have a strong like attraction and connection, because you're on the same kind of like frequency here, so to speak. But now with the King of Wands, though, especially with the Chariot, we could be talking about somebody who, they may have a hard time settling down. And that may be where, we need to kind of like slow down here and get ourselves under control. But I think it's more so on their side, because you're coming from a place of let's start, building this relationship here, right? And not wanting it to be like all over the place. But this person just, I don't know that they can settle down. Now, you move into the Nine of Cups with the King of Pentacles, and I have to wonder if this person doesn't become, more dependable with the King of Pentacles. But then I also look at this as, maybe you have been very much like a provider in this relationship, right? And with the Nine of Cups, what you're providing here is exactly what this person wants. There's this emotional fulfillment. But I really do think that for the sake of the relationship to move forward, especially if it has to do with money, they're really going to have to try to get themselves under control here. If we're going to start making a home, building a life, things like that with the Four of Wands. Can you depend on them, or do they just constantly go after what they feel like, what they want? Is that why we're looking at the Chariot, But I would say that for them, being able to move forward with this relationship, especially with the way that they're meeting you, it does bring them some emotional fulfillment. The problem, though, like I said, could be that financially or even in their career, they're needing to get some things under control or just get themselves under control, right? But with the Page of Pentacles here, we're talking about you being a little bit more realistic about how we're going to start to build this relationship over if there's been a lot of confusion in terms of where things were going. Because at some point there's communication on what we're doing, but it goes right back to this place. It's like back and forth. this relationship looks like it's getting ready to end, but it's really not. And this person is considering how to move forward, and you're communicating that. And then all of a sudden there's this heartbreak over what is being given or received here with the Six of Pentacles. But clearly you're feeling the pain. And I can understand where the confusion is coming in. But like I said, the High Priestess to me is going to be, we need to let everything out, you know, and stop holding things in. I think in terms of communication, it's going to be more important that they understand what you've been holding in, but they also need to do the same in order to clear this up, right? So I don't necessarily feel like we're talking about any bad secrets or anything like that. But like I said, I think that you're being a little bit more realistic in terms of what it's going to take here to start building things and building this stability. But the Page of Pentacles would be a good indicator here that we're starting to do it, but only after this person has gotten control over their life. You know, instead of doing this kind of like all over the place type of thing. You know, we could just be talking about somebody who travels a lot, right? Because it's what they enjoy, but what you're wanting is for them to settle down and be a little bit more dependable. You know, you have the same level of passion, but in terms of her being connected to the King of Wands, she's the one that pays attention to the details. He really doesn't have time for that, you know? I would say that what's worth waiting for the Virgo singles out there, don't think that a past relationship is worth waiting for. I think what's worth waiting for here is a better relationship for you. So you come into this with Death with the Seven of Cups. Clearly something has changed in terms of your relationships. This could, though, be about somebody who has, you know, an inability to let go of you. Or, you know, this could be you about somebody from the past here, because there's still fantasies about how things could be or how things should go, right? The Seven of Cups here is going to be about somebody who has fantasies about another person. And when you look at the Nine of Pentacles, again, we're talking about obsession. You know, somebody who's not wanting to kind of let go. But the thing is whenever an offer is made, you are going to be like, I don't know. I don't know if I really want this, right? You know, and again, like, we're just friends, you know. But this person, though, I think has like some idea of how things could be with you. Now, you know, it could be that for you, because of your past relationships, a lot of things have changed with you as far as death, you know, and you may have like your own idea of how you want your relationship to be. So if you're meeting somebody new, it may be that they become a little bit too obsessed, even though, you know, you have politely rejected them. Okay. Now, moving into the Six of Wands, you're talking about somebody who's putting themselves out there for another person. I don't necessarily think that this is game playing here, but with the Lovers, you know, this could be one of those situations where it's like, you know, especially if this is somebody from the past, where you may be considering it, you know. But the thing is, though, with the Lovers, this could be one of those situations where the reason why a relationship may have ended with a person is because they had a hard time, you know, choosing between you or another person. But clearly they're putting themselves out there. Now, if that's you, don't expect anything to change with this person, right? Especially if this is about somebody that you may be having a hard time letting go of. You know, but I look at this as a polite rejection. You know, but you can flip the script on this. This is either going to be about you. It may be a consideration with the Lovers on either side here, right? But clearly we're talking about an inability to kind of decide, you know, where somebody wants to go in terms of a relationship, whether there's another person involved or not. The Lovers is just going to show here that there may be at least some consideration. But I think that with the Seven of Swords, right, there is no connection. There is no physical connection. There's no mental or emotional connection, nothing. You feel nothing. And I think that, you know, that's kind of like what needs to be communicated here, so that this person kind of like stops putting themselves in front of you. Okay, and again, right, we can flip the script on this, but with the Hangman very clearly here, somebody was waiting for another person to become available. And that's because there's still this kind of like fantasy going on about you and how this relationship could go. right? With the World, I think that you may be dealing with somebody who's a little bit delusional and maybe not really looking at the situation right. And it's almost like, you know, especially if this is a past situation coming back up for you, they looked at their connection with you as making them feel very complete, right? This was the end all to be all relationships for them, and that's why they can't let go of the situation with the Nine of Pentacles. But like I said, this is like a friendly rejection here, right? We're just friends, but we're not ever going to be together. Because for you, I don't think that you feel anything. And even if you do consider it, right, it's worth waiting for the right type of person to come along. What is it that you're finding out about this person? Right? But the thing is that the bond is supposed to deepen if you get to know each other a little bit better. So the first thing here you're showing is the Wheel, right? This is supposed to be about positive changes within a relationship, but that's directly going to have to do with where there may have been like some bad habits of somebody inside the relationship with the Devil. Now, it could be that you started this relationship based on sex and it's changing into something else, but the Wheel is going to show something positive. Now, with the Queen of Wands, you know, there's a couple of different ways that I feel about her, but I don't know that you are dealing with somebody that really wants to give all of themselves to you. Again, whether you're dealing with male, female, fire sign, you got earth sign showing up here, right? But with the Six of Cups, you know, I kind of think that maybe it's not so much looking back at the past, I think, here with this person, but I think that's somebody who has an inability to let go of someone from their past, which is why they're not giving themselves to you completely. Now, when it comes to this, though, with the Two of Pentacles, I think that, you know, if this is about you, I think that there's some hesitation about approaching this person about, you know, what they're not able to let go of in terms of the past, right? But the past is very much playing a part in how the relationship is moving forward. So I have to wonder here, if you don't get to know this person more and know what it is that they're kind of feeling and thinking, if that doesn't kind of like help the relationship moving forward. But I can tell you with the King of Pentacles, pushing them is not going to help. This is somebody who's going to be a little bit more of they're going to retreat from you more, right? They're going to be a little bit more withdrawn when it comes to what they're focusing on in the past. And like I said, it could be about an ex. But this is about a relationship that I think is turning in a different direction, even though it started based off of just like hooking up here with the Devil, you know? And I don't necessarily think that, you know, this person is doing anything moving forward with this King of Pentacles. Now, if they're the ones that are being a little bit too pushy, this could be about you not wanting to give yourself fully to this person, right? You may not feel comfortable approaching them about things about the past, or they just don't feel comfortable approaching you. And that may be the problem. So if we're talking about like physical contact between you and this person, it's going to be that, you know, that may be the issue, right? Like they don't approach you for that. You may feel like you're the one constantly doing this, right? But you don't want to give yourself completely to this person. Yeah, and the Ten of Cups. Virgo, right? We can flip the script on this, but I'm really feeling like this is coming from the perspective of some of you here who are in a relationship. So now, first of all, with the Tower, you know, it could show that the relationship started off as like a cheating scenario, right? Which is possible here, but it can also just show jealousy. But with the Devil, right, like I said, this is like one of those relationships that starts in a pretty difficult way. You know, but with the Wheel, this is the relationship changing, but it's supposed to be positive changes that are happening here. Now, with the Queen of Cups, I think that what you need is something a little bit more loving, but I don't think that, you know, the person that you're currently dealing with, you know, with how the relationship started is actually giving you that kind of like romance or love, right? And they either don't feel comfortable approaching you or you them. It's one or the other here, right? But clearly somebody is not getting all of another person. And I think it's Virgo that's kind of like holding back, right? You want some more romance here, and you want to feel a little bit more romantic with this person, but I don't think that you think that it's something that they would be willing to give you. Now, and again, right, we're looking back at, I think, a past partner here, especially with the way that this kind of kicks off. And like I said, with Virgo, if you are the one that's being a little bit too pushy towards another person here, then yeah, they're just going to retreat and they're going to act like this is not a happy situation. Although I think that this is Virgo. You may be dealing with a really pushy partner here, and you may not be wanting to give yourself completely to them. The thing is with the Ten of Cups coming out, you know, clearly somebody is not happy, you know. But if you get to know each other better, does the bond deepen? Will you be able to let go of the past? Would they be able to let go of the past?